Hello everyone, my name is Lacey and I wanted to start off talking about an elderberry tincture. And it's very simple. Sometimes it can be very intimidating to make a tincture or start a tincture, but it's actually super simple, super easy, and I just wanted to show you guys kind of how I do it, how it can be done, and give you guys a couple of resources on how you can make your own or adapt it in different ways that it can be made. Okay, so some of the backstory on elderberry trees. It varies amongst different cultures, different religions, different backgrounds, different parts of the world. But for the most part, the elder tree is seen as a tree of protection. If you got a new home or it was your property and a elderberry tree was planted there, it was seen for protection of the home, or it would contribute in good fortune for the home. Some people saw it as a bad omen to burn elder wood. It was very bad, like bad luck. But the berries are really good for wildlife, and I've always thought that out of anything that you could grow or contribute to wildlife or have on your property, if you have the ability, then elderberry is one of the best things you can have for yourself, to be able to forage, get the berries yourself, and then contribute to wildlife. Okay, so some of the basics to go over with what a tincture is before we get started is a tincture is basically a concentrated liquid of plant or animal, but in this case a plant, where the material is taken and is dissolved into ethanol. And for hundreds of years, tinctures have been created to support well-being, to basically relieve health issues. You can do different forms of tinctures. Typically, if children are involved, you would want to use something more along the lines of like glycerin or vinegar instead of alcohol, depending on how old they are. Some people don't even like to use tinctures for children, which is completely understandable. Dosage varies depending on what your herb is. For elderberry, there's not a distinct dosage that I've seen. It varies between being a teaspoon to being a tablespoon. Some people actively use elderberry on a daily basis, but if they have illness set in, then they will use, if you've ever seen the dropper bottles, something like this, they'll do 2 dropperfuls every so many hours, at least 3 times a day. I believe that a dropper, if you do 2 dropperfuls, it's about a teaspoon. So about a teaspoon 3 times a day if you are feeling flu symptoms or feeling sick. I do want to say that for elderberries, this is the form that I'm using. Elderberries, it's preferred if you can get them fresh, or if you can find them growing, if you can forage them. Obviously with elderberry, you want to be super careful because berries can be mistaken for extremely poisonous ones, and elderberry is already poisonous in itself in the raw form, that being the leaves, stems, any part of the plant. The berries, they contain cyanide, so they do have to be cooked if you're turning them into jams, or if you're making pies or things like that. They have to be cooked. The process of making a tincture, the alcohol basically is getting rid of that so that you don't have to worry about the cyanide. It becomes an extract. So what you'll want to do above anything else is do your research. If you are on any medications, and if you have diabetes, or if you're pregnant, breastfeeding, if you're already taking laxatives, anything for the immune system, I would talk to your doctor first before trying to regularly consume elderberry on your own. But yeah, with that said, we can just get right into it. Okay, so to get this 8 ounce, about roughly about 8 ounces of a tincture jar, what I did was I used a quart-sized jar, about like this, and I fill it halfway. Some people, they say that you can crush up your berries, break them down. That's not what I did. I kept it super simple. So you just want to roughly fill about half of the jar. And you want to make sure that whenever, if you are foraging or getting them fresh, that it is just the berries, that you don't have any stems, leaves. You'll want to go through those and take those out. But since I am buying them packaged, it is just the berries. I prefer to go with organic if I can with all of my ingredients, since I am taking this medicinally. So just roughly, you can measure it out perfectly, but I go more with just the older method of just kind of like eyeballing it, I guess. So then you'll want to take your alcohol, which you'll want to be at least 80 proof or higher. Most people will recommend moonshine to be the best. But if you don't have something like that, you can find something just like an 80 proof alcohol, vodka, bourbon. I've heard mixed things about using a bourbon instead of a vodka just because of flavor. But for me, this is kind of like a medicine, and I prefer to use a sweetener or honey once the tincture is finished to change flavor and things like that. So you'll just want to take this and you'll want to fill your jar. Some people fill it just above the berries. I like to do one half the berries and then the other half alcohol, just because what ends up happening is you do have some berries that will rise, and it basically fills up the room so that you know that the berries are completely submerged. So what you'll want to do with this is you'll place your lid on, and then you'll want to make sure that you date and have something to mark your jar with. And you'll want to let it age for about 4 to 6 weeks. I always try to date when I have first put it in the jar. I try to put on there what alcohol was used, what proof the alcohol was, the contents of your jar, whether it's organic or not, and then you'll let that age. So then whenever it reaches this point, what you will do is you will take your jar. I'm missing my lid for this jar right now. But you will just find, you'll definitely want to have something like a funnel. But when I did this one, I just took this jar, placed the funnel on top, and then my cheesecloth, and then into the funnel. And then you'll just take the contents of this jar and pour it in, and just make sure that when you are wrapping it and you squeeze out all of the ingredients, you'll want to make sure that you get all of that into this jar, and then you can just discard your berries afterwards. Some people say that they keep the berries and they use it again for a second time, but for me, the properties get extremely low after the first use, so I don't recommend doing that. But then what you can do down the line, this is another tincture that I have going that's not finished yet. This is a clove tincture. It's 2 ounces of cloves, and I've used the same vodka for this. I ground up the cloves before putting these in with the alcohol. These still have a little bit longer to go, but I plan to make a separate tincture of this to go along with the elderberry as well as echinacea. And then when putting it into a dropper bottle, you'll basically have different parts. So my preference would be to take 2 parts elderberry, 1 part echinacea, and then 1 part clove. And when it is in this form, you can then add your sweetener or honey to taste. Some people leave their tinctures in these and then they just get their dosaging that way. I prefer to have them in the dropper bottles just because I don't like the cross-contamination of trying to drink out of the bottle or jar or trying to spoon it out. It's just not what I prefer. These do not have to go into the refrigerator. That's your preference. The alcohol does preserve them. They're good for up to 2 years, a year to 2 years. That's part of why I don't like to dip into them or try to prevent anything from getting into them. That's why I prefer the dropper bottles once it gets down the line. But yeah, that's pretty much how it works. It's super simple. Most of the job is just kind of waiting and being patient to get your tinctures and staying on top of when you need to make more, either for your family or friends. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, let me know. I hope to make some more of these videos down the line. So have a good week.